Mark Rogers TV running down positions across the country. We stop in the Pac-12 at Washington. Bring in Jack Follman from Pacific Takes to help us out with the Huskies quarterback situation. Jack, it's always a pleasure. Let's talk some Jake Browning out of the gate. Had some rough spots as a freshman. I still remember the opening night at Boise State. Tough place to play, hostile crowd, difficult defense to line up against, looked completely overwhelmed for 2 to 3 quarters. Then he started to gain his legs in the fourth quarter and made it a game. Your thoughts about Browning's development as you tracked him throughout the season?
Yeah, he was a guy who really came a lot of age in that first game. Then the whole season was kind of that game was kind of a whole metaphor for the whole season too. It was early on, even in the first few games, he had some flashes, but he was pretty shaky. But as the season went on, you kind of saw him develop until the very end of the season when he looked like a guy who was really starting to put it all together as a true freshman starter who has all Pac-12 potential in this future, maybe even All-American potential if, everything kind of comes together in that Chris Peterson system and program.
Yeah, KJ Carta-Samuels at the time as a fellow freshman battled Browning for the job, lost out. Now Browning seems to be firmly entrenched. Husky fans pretty comfortable if they have to go to Carta-Samuels?
I think so. I think as most situations, you would anticipate a pretty large drop-off. I think fans found that out last year when he started against Stanford and played the whole Stanford game when Browning was out, and he was really limited. Carta-Samuels was. I think people were a little bit surprised that he wasn't that ready to go. But as you know, it's a guy's first time ever starting in a game as a redshirt freshman, so against the best team in the Pac-12. So, yeah, I think that people. It's not a situation where it's okay, our backup's in. It's not that big of a deal, but it's not a gigantic drop off to where they can't compete in games with Carta-Samuels.
Right, Jack. The rest of the backup situation, you've got an incoming freshman in Daniel Bridge-Gadd, 64th rated dual threat quarterback according to ESPN out of Phoenix, and also a guy that showed up and showed what he could do in the spring.
Yeah, Bridge-Gadd is an incoming freshman, gotten in the spring. I don't think anyone anticipates him to see the field anytime soon, but kind of a worst case scenario thing. The guy to watch out for is a guy called Tony Rodriguez, who I think most even Husky fans kind of thought was an afterthought when he signed on as a JC guy, a guy who was kind of a, in case of emergency, break glass guy just to have on your roster for depth. But the reports from spring were that he was right there with Carta-Samuels, maybe even better than Carta-Samuels as the guy to be the backup, just a smooth passer who could work in Chris Peterson's system. So keep an eye out for him. I mean, he could come into fall camp and end up being the backup for all anyone knows. And I think for Husky fans, that's kind of, the better the backups are, the better it is for them.
Yeah, so the depth is decent. The future looks fairly bright, especially with a sophomore in place who's got a full year under his belt and doesn't look to be giving up that job anytime soon. And Jake Browning, 63% completion percentage last year. Pretty impressive for a freshman, especially in this conference. 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Those numbers should only get better. All right, Jack Follman from Pacific Takes helping us out on the Washington quarterback situation. Thanks a lot, Jack.
Thanks, Mark.